When we first got involved with Gail Ann Hurd, she had worked with these makeup effects guys who turned out to be brilliant and a godsend for the making of Tremors, Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff.
I think in the script they went so far as to describe that they have multi-pieced mouths and these snake-like tentacle tongues that come out, and beyond that we were sort of given some free rein. Whenever we're designing a creature, even if it's some kind of a fantastic monster, we really like to go to research books of real animals, looking at forms and details like skin texture, coloring, even the way an animal moves, and so it has some sort of basis in reality. If there's no reality, if it's all completely made up, completely fantastic, there's sort of an unreal quality to it that's hard to get over. So we would meet with Steve and Brent and Ron, and at the time we were sort of just getting our own shop established, and we didn't really have a base of operations. We would meet with them at a restaurant in Burbank and show up with a pile of books under our arms, sit down, spread them all out all over the table, and sit and drink coffee and go through these books and come up with a design.
They would say, "When do we get to come and see your shop?" And we'd say, well, this is more convenient for all of us, sort of a halfway point. And so, ultimately we did have to say, we're making some arrangements. As soon as you give us the check, then you can come over. And it was pretty tight there for a while.
They needed to be able to move fast, and they needed to hunt by sound. And they need to be big enough to eat a number of people, so you didn't think, well, gee, it ought to be full by now. And beyond that, there were certain sort of obvious things, the cigar shape, and we did come up with the idea of the spikes on the sides, that we felt like this is how they would push them. I had read somewhere that earthworms push themselves with these stiff hairs on their sides, so I thought, okay, we'll incorporate that.
Yeah, it must push itself along with these. All of them pushing at once. That's why it moves so fast.
Yeah, we had an early concept that we loved, so to speak, that had the whole worm, the whole inside of a worm would kind of extrude out of this big blubbery outer mass, and we just saw it as this kind of weird, yucky quality of motion. And we did some sketches and sent them over to Steve, and he passed them on to Gail, and then we got a call back from someone in Gail's office. The sketches had been going around the office, and he just said, "What are you guys designing? There's just something that's just way too phallic about this symbol." And then we stopped that. Oh yeah, we were calling it a turtleneck, and they were calling it a foreskin.
Yeah, Gail said that when we would fax the drawings over, all the women in the office would pass them around and giggle. So we kind of changed our tact there a little bit.
I really wanted something different in the mouth, but I didn't go much beyond that. There's a line in the script, and you can probably find it. It says something about the mouth opens like a grotesque flower.
So we started thinking about that and thinking that kind of implies almost a bending kind of muscular action. And what we did not want to do was repeat what had been done in Dune, because in Dune they sort of the sandworms were like earthworms, sort of more muscular, and they seemed to be kind of like a long muscular tube rather than anything with a skeletal structure or armor plating and so on. So we decided that the tact we would take would be from as realistic a standpoint as possible, that if a creature were to be swimming through sand or dirt, it would need a pointed armored head so that it could push that matter away, and then the rest of the body then would have some sort of muscular action. But the idea was that they would speed through the dirt like killer whales.
The whole idea was that for the first part of the movie, all we see are the tentacles that are coming out of the creature, and the idea there is that as the audience, we're misled into thinking, well, these are the creatures, they're only 6 or 8 feet long, and they're only about this big around, and maybe there's a way that you can deal with them, and it turns out that those are really much smaller tip of the iceberg. So that came about from the script. They weren't really described in any detail, and we did a whole series of different sketches. Some of them were very, very ornate looking, almost, again, following through with this flower motif. They had sort of an arrangement of little barbs around the outside that sort of looked like the petals of a flower with a very vicious mouth inside. And we looked at again, going back to real creatures as a basis. We used a lot of elements of, for example, a slug to give it that kind of a fleshy feel along both sides of the whole length of the tentacle. For the tentacles, we had mechanical versions of those. I think we had 3 full-length mechanical versions, and then we had a slightly shorter version, which we called our attack tentacle, that had a little tighter control over it. And that was the one that we always had leaping at Kevin Bacon, or just barely missing him when it was coiling around and trying to strike. We had a whole array of different pieces. And the worm never really existed full scale, with the exception of the dead body of the creature that has crashed into the retaining wall when it's chasing Val and Earl across the desert.
Hey, check this out! I found the ass end! Jesus, we really caught something here!
And Brent Maddock, one of the writers, he's a real practical guy. We were describing all the pieces we would make and the mechanics that would be inside them, and he said, okay, that's good, but what about a hand puppet, you know? Don't you think we should have a hand puppet? And we sort of said, okay, we'll have a hand puppet, and we used that hand puppet more than we ever expected.
Art Brewer was the special effects supervisor on the show, and he built a hydraulic rig that would bring our worm puppets up from underground. And the way we get a clean break is to have a big styrofoam sheet of textured ground material that it was easy to break through, and then there was a lot of loose dirt and big air cannons to kick up dirt and dust. And for one of the shots, because we wanted to have the creatures have a lot of life when they're bursting up, I went inside one of the creatures that was basically suspended like a big cone shape on these heavy-duty springs, and I was underneath, and I had a little respirator mask on, and I had a walkie-talkie and a little flashlight, and basically was camping out under there.
Get inside! Get inside!
Malte Chang Gets Eaten was an example of where we really overlapped with Art Brewer. We had to create an effect where a worm bursts right up through the floorboards and snatches a guy and thrashes him around and pulls him right down. So we had our worms that we had used out in the desert, and we knew basically how those needed to work. But the challenge here was to get up enough speed that we could bring it up and break through the breakaway floorboards and so on. Make that happen in the soundstage, which had like a water tank. I think it was a water tank. But it was a pretty narrow corridor that dropped down about 10 feet. So what Art came up with was a track that a dolly rode on with a boom arm on it. And we mounted our worm on the end of that boom arm. And about 10 of us pushed that dolly as fast as we could and then levered the arm up right at the last minute. So we got a lot of good speed and upward momentum.
1, 2, 3, action!
And we got the initial burst through, and we had guys on the cables pulling the jaws open so it would open up. And then in a separate cut, we showed the tentacles coming out, wrapping around Walter Chang, and starting to pull him back. We had a bicycle seat rigged inside the mouth of the creature so that the actor could sit on that comfortably inside the gullet. And I think he was about up to his chest or his waist or so. And we had a fake leg that we made for him that stuck out the side of the creature so that it would look like things had just been broken into an awkward way, and that it looked like, one leg was swollen and the other leg was broken and pushed out through the front, and we had the tentacles wrapped around him. We had just come off of Aliens recently, and we had said to ourselves, Aliens was a dark movie. Everything was wet in it and slimy. This seems to be more about, broad daylight, hot dust. Let's stay away from the slime. Let's just let them be, a little drier and create their own character that way. That's a little different than what you usually see. And we didn't slime up the mouth. We let it was glossy because of the coatings that we had put on it, but it was dry. And we saw it in the dailies, and the editor had remarked that it looked kind of like it was painted with nail polish. And we kind of, didn't fully understand that comment, but understood what he was reacting to, which was the lack of wetness. So we started putting the slime on it and started, doing the webbing in between the mouth. Look! We can make it! We can make it! So that by the time we got to the point where the dead creature had rammed into that retaining wall, and they break it away and the head kind of lolls out, and there's a POV shot where the camera's moving and all this dripping slime and all that. I mean, we really went overboard with the wetness there. And we saw it at a test screening with a bunch of guys, heavy metal guys, with Metallica t-shirts and all that, guys that would really eat that up. And when they saw all that dripping slime, the whole place, it was like the roof went off the theater. Everybody was cheering, and we looked at each other and we said, slime. Never underestimate the value of slime. We also did a lot of guts. We would provide the intestines of the creatures to the physical effects crew, and they would load them into their air mortars or, whatever their charges were to blow them sky high. And we had guts for shots where people were, pelted by a storm of guts, which was a pretty funny moment in the script where the obnoxious kid gets whacked in the face by a big piece of intestine. And we made those. A lot of those were made out of cotton batting stuffed into pantyhose and soaked in our methylcell slime, orange-tinted methylcell slime. We also got some pumpkin pie filling, and filled it up, for an extra little squishy, splatty effect. And those started to, decompose and rot, and they'd really start smelling like real intestines.
Take the bait!